the trial of King Charles I in Westminster Hall at the end of the Civil War remains arguably the most dramatic and constitutionally significant trial in English history. Monarchs had been deposed, imprisoned, and even murdered before, but Charles was the first to be placed on public trial by his own subjects, charged with treason for having waged war against his own people. His court, which served as both judge and jury, was made up of 156 civilians and soldiers, of whom over 50 refused to attend the proceedings, possibly intimidated by the status of the accused or fearful of what might happen in the future to those passing judgment on a king. The most conspicuous absentee was Thomas, Lord Fairfax, general of the victorious New Model Army, whose wife, Lady Anne, allegedly cried out during the trial from the gallery that her husband had more wit than to be there, and that not half nor a quarter of the people of England supported the proceedings. While this story may have been made up, the sentiment behind it was true. The vast majority of English people, and many parliamentarians, were opposed to the trial. Brought about by men who felt that they were doing God's work in punishing this man of blood, as Charles had become known, for a long time historians regarded the outcome of the trial as a foregone conclusion. However, the view that this was a show trial, with only one possible verdict and sentence, has been challenged more recently. Viewed differently, the trial was the very final attempt to reach a political settlement with the militarily defeated king. This is not to deny that there were indeed those present who very much wanted to see Charles dead, but the army's demand for justice did not automatically equate to a demand for the king's head. It was equally conceivable that, having been brought to trial and found guilty, Charles might have been stripped of powers, or perhaps even deposed. Similarly, the repeated efforts to get Charles to acknowledge the authority of the court by entering a plea, the open reporting of the trial, and its public staging in Westminster Hall all suggest that it was about more than simply the fate of one man. If Charles had entered a plea, he would, at least tacitly, have publicly acknowledged the supremacy of the House of Commons, and accepted a significant shift in the constitutional basis of power from Crown to Parliament. But if that was the aim of the trial, the king's opponents misjudged him badly. By instead reaffirming his commitment to God to uphold the ancient laws of the land, which, he argued, placed him above and beyond the reach of the court, Charles turned the trial into a public relations disaster for its backers, and perhaps left them with little alternative but to convict and execute him. 11 years later, after the restoration of the monarchy, many of the surviving regicides, those who had signed the death warrant for Charles I, were also put on trial in Westminster Hall. 9 were executed. Even dead regicides were posthumously punished. The bodies of John Bradshaw, President of the Court, Oliver Cromwell, and Henry Arton were exhumed, their heads stuck on spikes at the end of Westminster Hall, and their faces turned toward the banqueting house where Charles had been executed. Cromwell's head remained there for more than 20 years,